Hey everybody, welcome into Flag for Discussion, episode 40 for Monday, November the 3rd. My name is Farbod Merkazi. Jace Hatfield is out today. He is traveling back from a rainy Ames, Iowa, where he saw a Jeff Sims-led Arizona State Sun Devils take down Iowa State. We'll get into that game. Jace, I hope you're traveling well. I know one thing that you want me to say on this show specifically. It's episode 40. We want to thank everybody who's been with us so far. It's actually pretty unreal that, not that we made it here, obviously we're here now, but the fact that we have grown the level that we have people who are constantly giving us notes or giving us shout outs when we're right about things, when they like the certain take we had. In the end of it, this is just two really great friends talking college football, and that's what we wanted this to be, and that's what this is growing into. So we are very thankful to be here. Hopefully we'll look back on this in years and years from now and be like, remember episode 40? That was so long ago. We're on episode 6,000, whatever. All that said, this is the week 10 recap show. Another coach was fired today. Actually, two coaches were fired today. I'm recording this Sunday to be released on Monday. We'll get into all that. There were some nuts, just some games that felt drunk. I think that's the best way to put it. Some games that just felt just off the rails yesterday. We're going to talk about that. Make sure you are following us on Twitter at F4 Discussion. We're on TikTok at flag4 discussion, and on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts at Flag for Discussion. Normally we want to talk college football. We want to talk the sports and the games themselves. But this morning, another major Power 4 job opened up, and that being Auburn. So Hugh Freeze was fired by Auburn this morning. Let's get into, I want to go down the entire timeline. Hugh Freeze and Auburn, they lose at home to Kentucky 10-3 yesterday. The offensive wizard that Hugh Freeze is supposed to be just flamed out. And they started Ashton Daniels, the Stanford transfer, couldn't get anything offensively going, and they got beat by, honestly, I think laughingstock is the wrong way to describe Kentucky, but if you want to, like, they are the pit of every joke in the SEC. Like, Kentucky's known as the best head coaching job in the country just because you're not expected to do much. You're going to be paid SEC money, and look, if you go 7-5, 8-4 most of the time, you're going to keep your job and keep that pay and keep that lifestyle. So congrats to Kentucky. That happens. And then this morning, a Auburn burner account on Twitter finds that one of Hugh Freeze's regular Sunday afternoon tea times had been canceled or changed or altered. And it's amazing that we've gotten to the point in a day and age where burner accounts and random fans on Twitter have the same investigative poll that are the best and most revered investigative journalists throughout history have had. I mean, I think if politics had a fraction of what our people in college football have, there would be a lot more known about a lot more people. But regardless, this guy finds out that the tea time was canceled or changed, and then shortly thereafter, we found out from Ross Dellinger, from Pete Thamel, from Pete Nakos, that Auburn had been planning a team meeting, and it was the end of Hugh Freeze's time there. So he was given about a year longer than Brian Harsin, who was there prior to him. He was there for 2.5 years. The thing that I failed to mention in that whole timeline is after the game yesterday, he was asked about the fire Hugh chants that Auburn fans were raining down on him as he was exiting the stadium. And he said, "I wish I could ask for patience, but that's not really something that people want to give in this day and time." And I understand that. I just know we're so dang close. And if we had a few things go our way earlier in the year, I think we're looking at a whole different deal. Look, that could all be right. You could be close. But Hugh Freeze has been saying they're close for about a season and a half now. One thing you give credit to Hugh Freeze, unlike Brian Harsin didn't have the recruiting chops or the work ethic to bring in talent. Hugh Freeze took over kind of a barren program. Rightfully so. He's done what he's needed to do. bringing in talent. He obviously, you know, Cam Coleman, he's the star of the show and he's the headliner. But in general, the whole defense alongside the offense had improved. But that's not what you just hired him for, just to bring in talent. You don't hire him to go 15-19 overall. You don't hire him to go 6-16 against the SEC. You don't hire him to go 0-5 against Alabama and Georgia combined. You failed the Iron Bowl. And that is a game that we've seen Auburn somehow squeak out a victory or a close loss, despite having a far worse talent structure and roster than Alabama throughout the years. And Hugh Freeze failed them. Hugh Freeze has one ranked win during his time at Auburn, and is currently 1-5 in the SEC to start the season. So those are kind of like the just tangible facts of the nature here. Hugh Freeze was bound to be fired by Auburn, and I think a lot of people want to bring up a similar thing that of Brian Kelly. He just didn't fit there, and Brian Kelly was a whole different thing, and we covered that pretty heavily the last two shows. I don't think it was that. I think this is a coach that you thought was going to bring something that didn't bring it. Like, because I mentioned he brought in talent at a high clip, maybe not even as high as you want it to be at Auburn, but he was obviously at Ole Miss before. So 2012, Ole Miss's offense averaged 423 yards per game. That was fifth in the SEC. 2013, 473 yards per game, also fifth in the SEC. 2015, his offense peaked 17 yards per game. That was first in the SEC, tops in the country. At Liberty, he started out 2019, 419 yards per game, 2020, 481. Now, one in 2021 and 2022, it took a bit of a dip there, but it wasn't just the fact that he could bring in talent, he could be a good recruiter. It was the fact that he had the offensive chops, the scheme know-how, the knowledge to put together a really good game plan, to develop quarterbacks, develop a really good offense, and not only put it on like just an exciting time for your team because your offense is just running down the field scoring, but it's just an ability to, like, this is what his special feature as a head coach is. There's coaches everywhere that's like, that guy's a defensive guy. Dan Lanny's a defensive guy, but obviously the Oregon offense is really good. Kalen DeBoer is an offensive guy. You expect him to have really good quarterback play. You expect him to put up points. Now, does it work every week? No, it's the SEC. That's hard. You know what these guys are, their special features, if you want to call them, as a coach are there for. Hugh Freeze failed at that. Auburn. So I mentioned those stats. At Auburn, 2023 takes over. They averaged 351 yards per game, 10th in the SEC. In 2024, they were 6th in the SEC, so they took a jump. That's great. Total offense. This current season, as of today, obviously the season's not over, but he's no longer there. His Auburn offense has averaged 329 yards per game. That's second to last in total offense in the SEC. The only offense worse is South Carolina, that fired their offensive coordinator this morning, too, Mike Shula. I mean, when that is your calling card as a coach and you don't bring it, then you're having boosters, donors, other coaches, players thinking like, what's going on? And I think part of that is he just failed at the quarterback position. What we remember of him at Liberty or at Ole Miss is like the Chad Kellys of the world, Bo Wallace's of the world. Did they go on to have huge NFL careers? No. But what they did was they were really good college quarterbacks and were able to be at the helm of really good college offenses. Malik Willis is in the NFL. He developed a kid that like had talent and had traits. And yes, he's not a regular starter in the NFL, but he developed that at Liberty. So you just thought, bring him back to the SEC, give him Auburn's resources within NIL, and give him a competitive advantage. Man, what could the offense look like in the Plains? And that just didn't show up. At Auburn, he had Peyton Thorne at quarterback, TJ Finley, that was one of his like 8 stops. Robbie Ashford, the Oregon, South Carolina, now Wake Forest transfer. He had Ashton Daniels that played yesterday, Jackson Arnold. There's been more quarterbacks. And I remember, I think it was going into his second season last year at Auburn. He had an interview with Josh Pate, and Pate asked him point blank, like, I, from what I remember, Pate asked him point blank, like, obviously you're excited for this next season. There have been a lot of questions about your willingness to go out and acquire a new quarterback. And what Hugh Freeze said was, we're not at a point in our development as a team to go out and pay $1 million, $2 million, $3 million for a high level transfer quarterback to come in. My offensive line receivers, they're not that good. It would be kind of throwing our boosters and donors money against just away if I just went to bring that. You understood it at the time. I mean, they brought in Cam Coleman. They had a decent defensive class coming in. This past year, they brought in a 5-star quarterback. So they brought in talent. You could see there's a plan for the future, which is unlike the LSU Brian Kelly firing, where you were like, okay, I guess he's got to throw another dart against the board and see if this one works. And people just don't really like him down here. Hugh Freeze's he's had issues in the past. Don't get me wrong. Ole Miss, there was a reason he resigned from that job. But the main reason the main criticism people had of him outside of football wasn't that he's a bad person, wasn't that he's done crazy, terrible things. It was he plays a little too much golf. And that's fine if you're winning. There's a lot of head coaches out there who play a lot of golf, but they're winning, so it's not reported on as often. It's kind of the same thing as like when a president plays a lot of golf, but the economy's going well. People don't really care much. But then when the economy tanks and the president's out on the course, obviously that's headline news, like front of the paper news. I say all that to say you know that what he had in mind and when his answer to Pate had good merits there. They weren't ready for a top tier quarterback to come in. That team, that roster just wasn't ready for, I mean, who came in the last couple of years? A John Mateer to come in like he did at Oklahoma, or a Dylan Gabriel like he did at Oregon and Oklahoma. They weren't ready. Fernando Mendoza, Indiana, that roster is not ready for one of those guys. So I understand the sentiment that Hugh Freeze had of not bringing him in. But at the same time, it could have saved his job. I mean, I don't think like they went 6-7 year one, 3-5 in the SEC, 5-7 year two, 2-6 in the SEC. I don't know if that like would have turned them to 10-2, 11-1 teams, but it would have been a lot better than this. He hasn't had a win above 500 season at Auburn. I guess all I'm trying to say is like the guy that they thought they were hiring, they didn't get. And he wasn't as aggressive as people wanted him to be on the recruiting trail, even though they brought in talent. He wasn't as aggressive in the transfer portal as people wanted him to be. That was a flaw of Brian Kelly's as well. It feels like, honestly, to me, a bit of this is a coach that wanted to build it the way he used to be able to build it, and he can't anymore. This is a coach that wanted to build a pre-NIL, pre-transfer portal. I mean, there's a conversation right now about, like in the NFL, when you draft a quarterback in the first round, if he's not ready by December week 2, if he's not going well or showing flashes, then alarm bells are going off and you might be looking for a new quarterback. The coach or the GM might be on the hot seat. There's a similar sentiment in college football now too with coaches. The head coach at blank university, where maybe 10, 15 years ago, even you had 5 years and it was more year 5, year 6. Oh, that's when you're supposed to take the jump. It's more now, if you're not competitive by year 3, and Hugh Freeze learned that, you're going to be out of a job. If you're not competitive by year 4, I'm not saying this is the case at like a lower level P4 program, but at a top tier, top covered and louder fan base is like Auburn, that is going to be the case, point blank and period. The pressure to win at the highest level, whether Auburn is able to do that at this point in time, is extremely high. And he just wasn't able to do that. Now, he had a $15.8 million buyout. So that's amongst the more doable buyouts for any of the coaches that are fired now. And that honestly opens up another bag of worms. How good is this Auburn job? It's obviously It obviously probably slots into the top 4 job openings with Penn State, Penn State, LSU, Florida, and pick your poison of whoever you want. There's a lot of job openings. It probably slots in right in the top 3, top 4, and there's 4 openings in the SEC. But it's more a conversation of, okay, Auburn had Gus, and they extended Gus. They fired Gus. They brought in Brian Harsin. Brian Harsin tanked the program more. He got 2 years, and then now they hire a big name in Hugh Freeze. He got 2.5, 3 years. They fire him. Obviously, this job's going to be coveted. Obviously, there are college football coaches around the country that are going to be like, oh yeah, if Auburn opens up, I'm going to take it, because it's a job in the SEC. It's a job in the South where you can recruit the best of the best players more easily. It's just, you have to ask yourself, how good of a job is it at this point? Where does the program, does the administration, do donors and boosters, do they need to be taking a look in the mirror and be like, maybe we can make some changes here that would set our coach up better for success? And I'm not saying that they haven't so far. I mean, look, the thing that you can say pretty confidently about Billy Napier and Hugh Freeze is they brought in talent into the building, but it wasn't working. They were able to do half their job well, but the job that actually that leads to results, the job that led to him either getting extended or fired, that is the one that he didn't follow up on, and that's the one that didn't work. Where do they go from here? I mean, there's so many coaches out there now that I asked Jace on our recap show last week. He's like, is that a job that like you can go out and still covet the best of the best, despite the fact that LSU is probably going to get the better candidate, or Florida might get the better candidate? All right, that was weird. I mean, we may be on episode 40, but we still deal with Wi-Fi issues, and my Wi-Fi just kicked me off of the recording. But I think and I hope that it saved the first 20 or so minutes, so I'm just going to add this on to that. I just wanted to complete my thoughts on Hugh Freeze in general. He's had a lot of words in the past at Ole Miss, at Liberty, for various different reasons. I mean, I always joked with Jason. We always joke together that you're never hopeful for a coach's future at a program when one of the first things the athletic department does is take away his Twitter access because they're worried about what he might do on it. So that was an active joke for that. I think despite his warts, despite everything, he has proven to be a good football coach in the past, and it just didn't come to fruition here. And a lot of that was because what he was hired to do and bring his offensive expertise, bring his schemes, bring his recruiting prowess, none of that showed up. Now, I think the previous recording cut me off when I was talking about how good the Auburn job is. Realistically, it's still a very good job. It's an SEC job, provides you the opportunity to recruit and build a program in the South, compete against the best of the best, where NFL bodies are all the same thing. You know, it's going to be one of the most coveted jobs this cycle. And where I'm concerned for other programs is, are they just those like left picking up the scraps of whatever coaches are available, or are there genuinely high quality coaching candidates to go all around? Because we've said it once, we've said it twice, we said it the last 2 shows. It's not just the current openings that matter. It's the jobs that open up because the current openings hire someone. At some point, the programs that get the pick of their litter and get to choose whoever they want, that's great for them. At some point, someone's going to have to be picking up the scraps. I wonder who that will be. For Auburn's sake and for the rest of the season, look, they still have talent on the team. They have a good defense for the most part. They have offensive skill talent. That doesn't really matter when you're 1-5 in the SEC, 4-5 overall. You're not going to be making any SEC title game. You're not going to be making anything of note. You're shooting for a bowl game, and DJ Durkin, who has his own flaws, is taking over as interim coach. This is an opportunity for him to show that his warts of the past are behind him, and he might be a good coach. I don't know. Maybe he'll start getting some interest from other places. For Hugh Freeze himself, I'm sure if he wants to coach again, he'll have the opportunity. I'm curious. He having gone through the cancer diagnosis over the summer and now getting fired, whether or not he wants to jump right back into it. But look, college football coaches, this is the only life they've known for 30 years. They want to coach and they want to be part of players' lives. They want to be drawing up game plans. They want to be making, coming up with schemes and whatnot. So I'm sure if he wants to coach, someone will give him a shot. Probably not a Power 4 major program, but someone out there will give him a shot. Your major goal here for Auburn is how are you going to protect this current roster from getting just picked apart in the transfer portal by other programs? Because I think if Cam Coleman was on Ohio State last year, people would be talking about Cam Coleman the way that people talk about Jeremiah Smith. Jeremiah Smith might be more talented. Cam Coleman's not that far off. So that might have been just a hodgepodge of thoughts on Hugh Freeze, Auburn, and this whole firing. I just think in general, like I said countless times, it wasn't a Brian Kelly situation where people didn't like him and he wasn't a fit. It was a situation where he was hired to do something that he just didn't do. And it confuses you why he wasn't able to do it, because he's done it everywhere he's been. He's been a special offensive play caller everywhere he's been, but lo and behold, he hasn't done it. That happened. Mike Locksley at Maryland also got fired today. I'll talk about that a little bit after we got over some games and our picks. Speaking of our picks, Jace had another winning week. I had another losing week. Jace went 6-4 in our picks. We both agreed on Oklahoma +3 at Tennessee. That obviously covered. They won the game. Jace was right on it with SMU, ASU. He picked Florida correct. By the way, the Florida game, I know, Gunnar Stockton, you did the right thing by taking yourself down at the 1 and kneeling out the game after that. But you had the freest touchdown ever, and all Georgia -7.5 bettors are probably pissed off at you and Kirby Smart for not punching it into the end zone. I picked Georgia to cover that game. I remember when Gunnar rolled out and it looked like he had a wide open touchdown. I was like, yes, I'm about to cover that game. I'm about to pick up a game on Jace. And then he takes a knee at the 1. So that one hurt for me. Good pick by Jace. We both were wrong on USC. Despite Dylan Raiola's unfortunate season-ending injury, they couldn't muster up more points. They did win the game, so that's all that matters, but they didn't cover the 6.5. And then, honestly, the Penn State-Ohio State game that was -20.5 for 2.5 quarters of that game, I felt great about that covering. I picked Penn State to cover the 20.5, not to win it by no means. And Ohio State's defense showed up. Ohio State's defense is really damn good, guys. And I think they're just beginning to join a small list of teams that have allowed 17 points and under through their first 8 or so games. And that list includes like 2021 Georgia, includes like 2023 Michigan, like the teams that won the national title. And I think that's the crazy part about, I know they're ranked number 1, so you can't say they're underrated, but no one's talking about Ohio State. No one's talking about the job Ryan Day's done with a new quarterback, a new OC, a new DC, and they continue humming. That's a sign of a healthy program. If you can make changes, but the changes are thought out well and they mesh well within the current established culture. And obviously, it does help having Julian Say and Caleb Downs and the roster that they have for that OC and DC to come in. So after Jason's 6-4 week, he's now 38-36-1. After my 4-6 week, I'm 40-34-1. So I still have the lead. I have a 2-game lead on Jace in our overall season picks. But to be honest with you, it's getting kind of scary for me. I've had a couple down weeks of picks in a row, and Jace has been better, where he thought hope was lost for him catching up to me in our picks at the beginning of the season. It's slowly starting to matriculate back to even for both of us. So Who knows? He might have the lead this time next week, and he'll be on next week to talk about it. Shot in the bark. This is flag for discussion history. Both of our shot in the barks hit. Jace picked SMU plus 12.5 against Miami. That game, obviously, we'll get into Miami. We'll get into SMU's win. Rhett Lashley just signed an extension at SMU, effectively taking him out of coaching conversations and the carousel from all the major programs I want to hire, and particularly Arkansas, Auburn, maybe Florida. But so obviously Jace got the 1 point for the cover. He got the 2 extra additional points for the outright win. So in our shot in the bark standings, I was going into it up 7-6. Jace gets 3 points. I was like, damn, he takes the lead there. He had 9-6. And then I had Kentucky plus 10.5 at Auburn. We just went over the Hugh Freeze thing. Auburn can't score more than 3 under a top tier, at least so-called top tier offensive head coach. And I get the outright win by Kentucky. So I'm sitting at 10 points for shot in the bark. Jace is at 9 points. Believable shot in the bark week. I think very highly of the two of us. I don't think we'll be able to match a dual hit like that very often. And then for the F4D Parlay, look, it was bound to hit. We went 3 for 4 on legs this week, so obviously the parlay itself didn't hit. We had Oklahoma money line that hit. We had Minnesota minus 2.5 against Michigan State. That one hit barely in overtime. I can't believe how close that game ended up being, because I just thought that Minnesota would come in pissed off and ready to put BTA onto Michigan State because of the way they showed the last week against Iowa. It was a lot closer than I thought it would be. It was too close for comfort, but they still pulled it out in overtime. Cincinnati, Utah, we had the over on that, 55.5. That hit. So that was a good 3 for 3. And then our fourth leg, we had the under 68.5, Mississippi State, Arkansas. And we recognized, all right, these are 2 solid offenses with 2 terrible defenses. We recognized the reason why the number was 68.5, but we also just told ourselves, like, out of principle, Jason and I said at the same time, out of principle, we can't take the 68.5. That is ridiculous. Lo and behold, we should have taken the over on that, because the Arkansas was up 35-21, and then they just blew it. The most ridiculous stats you could ever think of happened in this game. This game had like too many penalties, first of all. Arkansas had 18 penalties for 193 yards. That's a pretty decent rush game stat for a team. Pretty good rush. Like, if your team rushes for 193 yards, great. Arkansas gave that to Mississippi State just through penalties. I just don't understand how that could happen. Like, that is the most outrageous stat I've ever heard in terms of college football. Like, 18 penalties, first of all, 193 yards. Okay, I can't get too carried away on that. So our parlay almost hit. We're now still 1 for 10 on the season in terms of parlays hitting, but that's all right. We'll get them next week. Time for cleanup crew. I want to go through the whole week in terms of news and notes, happenings that from the games, from coaching carousel, everything. So let's get into cleanup crew. Matt Rule, this past week, he signed a extension, 2-year extension on top of his current contract. So that'll go into the early 2030s at Nebraska. And it gives him a buyout of $15 million for this year alone. It doesn't completely take him out of the coaching carousel for this season, but it effectively removes him from teams that don't want to pay $15 million to buy out a coach in order to pay him a signing bonus and hire him and hire his staff. It appears kind of just Nebraska trying to make sure they keep him so they can keep building for next season. And who knows? That Rule's come out. He said everything, all the right things. He mentioned how much he loves Penn State. He mentioned how much that university, that program, that logo, that brand has meant to him and his family. He also has come out and said the right things about how when you're the right fit somewhere, and he thinks he's the right fit in Nebraska, that's where you should be. You shouldn't be so quick to leave. His wife has a business there. him and his family, his kids, they all love it there. If he truly just loves it there, good for him. He got an extension. The other aspect that people are bringing up is like 3 months after he signed his extension at Baylor, he takes the NFL job. I don't think that's something to worry about in this case. Not necessarily NFL, more so just taking any other job. I think I've been gypped by college football coaches believing them when they've lied in the past, but I don't think this is a situation where Matt Rule's fibbing. I think he fully plans on being at Nebraska next season, and he got a nice payday and a good buyout for this year. If he does choose to leave, Nebraska is going to get paid $15 million for it. So good for everyone involved. Tough news for Nebraska, though. In the third quarter of their loss against USC on Saturday, Dylan Raiola got sacked, broke his right fibula. He's out for the season. Look, Nebraska's 6-3, 3-3 in the Big Ten. That loss against USC was their 29th consecutive loss to an AP Top 25 opponent. That streak extends to 2016, that's a terrible number. I think this is where you have to start talking about expectation at the beginning of the season versus current, because I think expectations change pretty rapidly. I think if you were a Nebraska fan and I told you, hey, you're probably going to go 8-4 this year or 9-3, which is still on the board for all of this. They're 6-3 right now. You probably would have said, I'll take that. That's a sign of our program elevating and continuing to get better. But after they started out hot, your expectations kind of shifted. And you thought, oh, this is a team that could maybe make the playoff. This is a team that could maybe compete for a Big Ten title. And I think that's the fun conundrum of how do we balance our preseason expectations and preseason thoughts about a team versus in season. And I think the in-season ones are naturally just too lofty and high. If teams don't meet those expectations, all of a sudden there's like hate brought onto the coach and the players about it. And I think, look, if they go 8-4, 9-3, this is a successful year. They're still building. Nebraska has not been good for a very long time. Matt Rule, for what it's worth, he's doing what he needs to do to keep building it. It's not extra special. Within the extension, there were promised extra investment from the boosters, donors into NIL and recruiting for Nebraska. So, look, this could be the launching pad for Matt Rule for Nebraska. Tough way to lose that game. Tough way to lose your quarterback. Especially, like, I liked the whole, like, the stadium atmosphere. That's a fan base that deserves a winner. They're always showing up no matter how bad they are, and Matt Rule's going to try to hopefully bring them back. The USC side of it for me is really interesting because USC, I saw a tweet after their game, after their win, and it said USC has earned their Big Ten card now, which obviously, one, hilarious. Number two, you could argue that for sure. USC went into a game and pretty quickly they realized they could not pass the ball. Whether that was just Jaden Maiava being off or the pass game being off. I mean, Jaden Maiava, after the game, he said, when you play quarterback long enough, you realize that these games happen. This stuff just happens. Well, he goes 9 of 23, 135 yards. He averages 5.9 yards a pass. He had an interception. This is a game that, like, previous USC teams would have just been shut down under Lincoln Riley, because if their pass offense isn't working, they don't have enough balance historically to still put up points. And yes, for the first half, they were pretty uninspiring offensively. It's 6 points total, but they scored 15-10 in the second half. They go 337 total yards. They had 202 rush yards, 5.3 yards per rush. I mean, King Miller, you got to give him all the credit in the world. He goes 18 carries, 129 yards, 7.2 yards per rush. Jaden Maiava has 62 yards on the ground. Brian Jackson put up 20. I mean, my point is, this is a game that USC would have been shut down and stopped in prior years. I don't think USC is a finished product. I don't think USC is close to being the best team in the country. They have flaws, for sure. But if you want to talk about, like, the true best team in Lincoln Riley's era, at USC, you're looking at them right now. They are balanced. They can beat you through the air. They can beat you on the ground if that's not working, or they can beat you through the air if the run game is not working. Offensively, they're right there. Defensively, they can stop you too. I mean, obviously against Illinois, that was a bad matchup for them, but they handled Michigan pretty well. It seems like a bit of a trend of going on the road has not been pretty kind for USC. But I mean, I think if you have USC on your schedule for the rest of the year, even if you have a better talent roster like Oregon, you should be a little nervous. Like, you should be doing your homework, because Lincoln Riley, we know the offensive magician he is, and we know that they've got players and their defense can actually get some more consistent stops. Not all the stops you need, but at least some consistent stops. So be scared of USC. The next game to talk about, SMU beats Miami 26-20 in overtime. There were some bad calls towards the end of the game, and look, the ref show was on full display throughout the SEC and the ACC last night. It kind of gypped a couple major programs yesterday, and I'm not saying Miami lost because of the refs, because they shouldn't have been in that situation in the first place. But SMU takes advantage of it. They tie it up. They go into overtime. Miami starts their drive. Carson Beck, they move the ball a little bit. Carson Beck throws a pick, and then all SMU has to do is kick a field goal to win. But of course, they want more than that. They score a touchdown. Win. SMU is now 6-3 overall, 4-1 in the ACC. Miami is 2-2 in the ACC. I think that is the craziest part. If you want to just talk about not how the mighty have fallen, but Miami, I think 2 weeks ago was us talking about how dominant they are. They have the best offensive line, arguably, in the country. They have a really good defensive line. Their secondary is solid. They have a couple really special talents at receiver. Malachi Toney's awesome. Their run game is good, and Shannon Dawson and their DC have proven to be pretty solid hires over the years. I don't know how much to make of the Mario Cristobal November loss fiasco from his Louisville loss. Carson Beck threw 5 picks. It doesn't matter how good or bad of a coach you are. Your quarterback throws 5 bad picks, you're not going to win that game. And that was that Louisville game. A lot of people made fun of Mario for it, and rightfully so. He's still the head coach and the representative of the program that did that. But at the same time, I don't think that was the traditional didn't take the knee and lost the game for it Mario type of losses. This one was, though. This one they blew it, and this one they shouldn't have let that happen. A better coach team with Rhett Lashley and that roster, that run game, the home team went in there and they took it. And SMU now has a better chance of making the ACC title game and the college football playoff than Miami. I had this plan for later in the show, but I do want to just bring it up now. ACC standings are wild. Virginia is 5-0 in the conference. They're 8-1 overall. So they're in the pole position to make the ACC title game. Georgia Tech lost yesterday, by the way. They're 5-1 in conference, 8-1 overall. Pittsburgh is 5-1 in conference, 7-2 overall. And then there's 3 4-1 teams: Louisville, SMU, Duke. So at some point, the number 2 team in the ACC will get sorted out, and we'll have a better and more clear look at who's going to be in the ACC title game. I think all because of Miami's faults, and like 5 teams in the conference have one conference loss already. If Virginia wins out, they're definitely in the college football playoff. But let's say they don't. Whoever is the ACC champion is going to be in the college football playoff, and that's it from that conference. This conference has turned into kind of what we kind of made fun of the Pac-12 for, because the Pac-12 was cannibalizing itself. The best teams would just beat each other, and the resumes would never be good enough to make the college football playoff, the 4-teamer in the past. And now you look at it, I mean, Virginia's 5-0. They're right there to make it. Georgia Tech, I think, should make it. That was an uncharacteristic loss for Brent Key and the boys. But I'm struggling to find a second college football playoff contender when you're looking at the ACC standings, outside of just the conference champ. So that is something to keep an eye on there. Maryland fired Mike Locksley after 7 years at the helm this morning, right after the Hugh Freeze firing was announced. He went 37-45 overall, 17-44 in Big Ten play. I mean, this was more of an underrated firing. I don't have a ton to say about it here. It really depends on what Maryland wants to be. And if they want to elevate themselves as a program, it's going to require even more investment from their athletic department, from their boosters, all down. And Mike Locksley probably deserves to be fired, but I'm surprised that it happened. Like, I didn't think he was on such a hot seat that it would be mid-season in year 7. I thought it would be at the end of the year, just parting of ways. But clearly, something's just taken a turn for the worse there. And I think it was at the beginning of the year, he openly admitted that Maryland had lost his locker room with NIL. He had lost his locker room in terms of respect, and he worked to build it back. And he thought they were in a good spot. I don't know how much of that goes into all of this, but Mike Locksley will no longer be the coach of Maryland. And I mean, I'm interested. See, this is what I was saying about the Hugh Freeze thing. If, let's say, LSU, Florida, Auburn, Penn State get the top 4 head coach candidates, and I know that's subjective, where is Maryland in the totem pole? Probably with or above UCLA. That's what I'm wondering, is like how many coaches, like you probably have to have a coach in mind if you're firing a guy who you could have parted ways with at the end of the season. But I think Maryland, Jace says this all the time, wanted to get in and make sure everyone knew that they were open, so they didn't fall behind the 8 ball. Is Arch coming around? Is Arch really good now? Decently good now? Is Texas back? Yeah, I can't believe I just said that. I mean, Arch Manning goes 25 of 33, 328 yards, 9.9 yards per pass, and 3 touchdowns, no picks against Vanderbilt yesterday. I mean, first of all, Texas almost blew that game. They gave up 21 in the 4th to Vandy. Was unreal himself. But I think if we're going to go out and say Diego Pavia is one of the best quarterbacks in the country, and he puts up a very similar stat line, a little bit better than Arch did, then I think we have to give Arch all of his flowers too. They come out, they take care of business, and I think one of the reasons is that run game wasn't reliant on Arch. That offensive line was able to get a push. They had 27 carries for 100 yards. Eisner and Baxter led the charge rushing the ball, and that takes a lot of pressure off your quarterback. I mean, your quarterback still threw the ball 33 times, but in the past games that we've talked about, it's like they wanted Arch to be Superman, and that's not something you can ask a first-year starter or any quarterback to do. I mean, look at how LSU is doing with Garrett Nussmeier when they're asking him to do that. Texas almost blew the game. Sark probably will have to look to fix that. But, I mean, you look at these numbers. Texas had 23 first downs. They went 7-11 on 3rd down. They had 428 total yards, 328 yards through the air, 100 yards on the ground. I mean, it's really good. This is a team that I think can beat anybody, but they have one SEC loss. All their hopes and plans for the future are right in front of them. It's just, will they be able to get it done? When you look at the SEC standings, Texas, Ole Miss, Georgia are the one-loss teams in the conference, and then that's behind Alabama and A&M. If Texas, A&M, or Alabama take a loss, then all of a sudden this becomes a lot more messy, and the Longhorns have a chance to get back into it. So I don't think that they're necessarily an elite team, but if Arch continues this progression, and if Texas continues to be able to develop their faults that they have so far, that's going to be pretty scary. And then the last game to talk about is, actually, there's 2 more games to talk about. So Jace went to the Iowa State ASU game. That game, ASU, Kenny Dillingham, Jeff Sims. I mean, I've said a lot about other programs, but you got to give these guys credit. Kenny Dillingham's one hell of a coach. The fact that they were able to scheme up an offense for Jeff Sims, and I'm no fault or slight to the guy, but he's been in college football forever. and hasn't inspired me much as a quarterback. So I thought Iowa State was going to win and cover the 7.5 in that game. But lo and behold, they didn't. Rocco Beck looked really shaky. I think Jace and I were talking about it over text. Every time he drops back, you don't know what's going on. You don't know. Like, he could unleash the most beautiful spiral, most beautiful pass you've ever seen, and the next pass could be 15 yards over the head of his receiver. And Jace mentioned is he might have gotten comfortable last year having multiple NFL receivers on his team, and he might have not have been as good as people thought he was, but he's had a couple rough games. I think it's in him to come back and be really good, but he's struggled, and he's one of the reasons Iowa State's been struggling of late too. I mean, I don't know where Iowa State and ASU are going to finish off. Sam Leavitt's out for the season. That's the bummer with ASU, because you thought they could be really good and maybe even build on their playoff appearance last season, but then Sam Leavitt's been in and out of the lineup all season with injury, and now he's officially out for the whole year. Hopefully he gets healthy. Kenny stays at ASU, and we'll see both of them back at ASU next season to try to do some special things in the Big 12, because I think Sam Leavitt's a really good quarterback, and we know how good Kenny is already. That's that aspect. And then I want to go back to the ACC real quick. Duke beats Clemson in Clemson for the first time since 1980, breaking a 15-game losing streak on the road there. The crazy part for me is how bad that Clemson defense is. And maybe Penn State fans are right. When they were celebrating Tom Allen leaving to become Clemson's defensive coordinator, you almost thought, why are they celebrating? He's a really good DC. You got a really good DC too in Penn State, but it's not like he was the reason Penn State lost in the playoffs last year. But all that said, that defense at Clemson is really bad right now. And they have NFL players on it, which is all the more jarring. The fact that they can't seem to be doing anything. I mean, the stats from the game, Clemson had 560 total yards, 385 to the air, 175 on the ground. They had a 9-minute time of possession advantage. If I told you all of that, you would tell me, oh, Clemson won comfortably. They didn't. That defense, they fell quickly down 21-7. And then it was kind of just a shootout from there. Dabo Swinney made a lot of comments about his defense. He made a lot of comments about how this is the hardest year of his career. Maybe the only one he can think of is 2010 when they had equally tough season. And I think that's where you can start wondering, like, where is Dabo's heart right now? Because obviously he wants to finish out the season, but then what's next season looking like? I trust Dabo Swinney to have the chops in him to build Clemson back, but it will take a bunch of change from him philosophically as a head coach and how he wants to build this program as a program architect. So that is all there. I mean, this game, there was a terrible PI call in the fourth quarter, 43 seconds left or so. Aaron Mensah's just rolling back, trying to avoid a sack on 4th and 10, throws it up, throws a prayer. A ball is not catchable. The refs bail Duke out, giving them a PI, a first down, stopping the clock, and Duke scores a touchdown. Next play, they convert a 2-point conversion, win the game 46-45. Obviously, that should not happen if you're Clemson. And obviously, the call hurt, and it was probably wrong. We'll find out more from the ACC league office if they have any thoughts on the call itself sometime this week. But it was just a tough way to lose that game in general. Clemson's now 3-5, 2-4 in the ACC. I still find it bonkers that we are in a season that when we went into it, we were all in agreement, essentially. The two best rosters pound for pound in the country are Penn State and Clemson. They have longtime head coaches there. They have a senior quarterback. They're senior laden throughout. They're extremely talented on defense, on offense. They have NFL players everywhere. They both have every reason to be competing for the national title. And they're both not only unranked, they're both fighting for making a bowl game this year. And that's the crazy part. James Franklin's out of a job. I don't think Dabo's going to be out of a job. I think that's all to clean up. There's a ton that's happened this week. Obviously, the number one headliner is the Hugh Freeze firing. Oklahoma went into Tennessee. They beat them. They required an onside kick. Crazy game. They beat them. I mean, there's a ton. I mean, Arkansas, Mississippi State, I already mentioned 18 penalties, 193 yards. We'll be back for week 11. Jace will be on the preview show then. I appreciate everybody, as I mentioned at the top of the show, for sticking with us and being here for us, listening to our shows, giving us the ratings. We're only on episode 40, but it does mean a ton for us that we are already here and you are here with us. So Jace will be back on our Thursday recap show, a preview show of week 11. I'll be here as well. Thank you so much for listening. This has been Flagged for Discussion.